straights are bad, and flushes are bad. The best hand you can make is 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. You get one chance to exchange as many cards as you want, and then it's no limit betting on the final street. So often in this game, you're going to be looking to draw to 10 or 9 lows. 8 low draws and 7 low draws are really ultra premiums. And then you have the battle of some weak pat hands at some point as well, which we look at something like this for Texas Mike, which could be either a draw to a 10 or a weak pat jack, depending on how the action goes.
Yeah, these jacks can be very difficult to play as they're complicated hands. Yuri has not much here in the big blind, although his hand does have some of the properties you'd be looking for in a bluffing candidate.
True. I think the only way to play this hand as Yuri, perhaps, is to 3-bet and snow it, or he could potentially call and draw 3.
I wonder how Texas Mike would react to a 3-bet.
And he does go for this 3-bet.
Yeah, this is a very uncomfortable spot for Texas Mike. I think this 3-bet size is a little too large, by the way, but you know, he's leaving himself a very awkward amount for the river.
Right. Sometimes you do go a little, and Texas is really thinking this over. Sometimes you do go a little larger out of position in no limit deuce, just because you're going to have some marginal pat hands that are very vulnerable against those draw ones, and you just don't mind taking the pot down right away. But perhaps given the stack sizes, this is a little bit on the large side.
So Mike is continuing. I'm really a little just unsure what his plan is in the head. I believe Yuri's going to stand pat.
Yeah, now if Mike had something like a jack 9-5-4 deuce or jack 8-5-4 deuce, this makes a lot more sense where he can pat facing a draw or draw quite often facing a pat.
Super interested to see how Texas Mike views this situation. Because if he pats behind, he's effectively bluffing himself. He does not beat value. He could draw 1 to this 10-5. I believe he was hoping that Yuri was going to draw 1.
I agree. And it's not that compelling of a draw is the problem with breaking the jack off. But at the same time, you only pat hands you beat are snows.
So for what it's worth, if you do think your opponent is bluffing very often here, you can draw and then just call the river anyway.
I would have actually preferred Mike to just move all in pre-flop, Chris, if he was going to choose to continue with his hand.
That would have given him more options.
You can fold your opponent off of some of his snows. You can actually fold your opponent potentially off some weak-made hands, and then you have that option to break or pat depending on what your opponent does.
Okay, so Yuri needs to jam now. He cannot win a showdown. This is a very nerve-wracking situation because if he were to get snapped, he knows he's out of the tournament. I suppose he'll leave a few chips behind. I don't think he's going to go for a small size, and he does just say all in.
He just goes all in. Wow.
And Texas Mike, I do not believe, can call. This would be an insanely heroic call, having paired his 4 on the end. It would have actually been a very interesting spot had Monchek caught a 10 low on the river, as that hand also would not necessarily want to call this spot. Texas Mike seems to believe that Yuri is bluffing in this situation, at least at some frequency. He has not immediately released, and even the fact that he continued pre-flop is telling me that Texas Mike has a non-belief in this hand. Look at him throwing out his time banks, really believing that Yuri is capable of having a snow in this situation.
This is wild. Texas Mike, and does he have, Chris, the type of hand that actually looks like it would be very good against the blockers?
He asked how much, so he wants to get a full count. I mean, all hands are sort of equal against a pat snowing range. I mean, yes, it does make some sense that he doesn't have any of the
I think the 8s and 9s are often very featured in those pat ranges, right?
But the way Texas Mike approaches poker, I believe that he just has maybe a good read of the situation. He does seem to play more instinctually than some of the other players at the table, not necessarily using his blockers to make decisions.
Also, Chris, worth noting, the stacks are all so close. This would be for almost all of Texas's Mike's chips as well. So Chad is an extremely interested observer who would like to see a call no matter what the result of the showdown is.
Let's not underrate how impressive of a bluff this is from Yuri. To take this hand and go for it with the 3 chip stacks being as close as they are, this is an incredibly heroic play.
And Texas Mike is not posturing. He is genuinely considering calling Yuri with a pair of 4s.
This could be like the dumbest call of all time, or like the sickest.
Yuri cannot like hearing that.
He is sniffing something out here.
I haven't seen a 6, 7, or 8 yet.
Alex, you called it.
Yeah, he really thinks that those...
I paired.
10 seconds.
If I draw 1, how can you jam? You just started with like a good 8 or a 7.
Time extension.
I would be...
How can you jam if I draw 1?
My pulse would be going 200 miles an hour in Yuri's seat.
He's so gangster.
Wow.
And he makes the call.
An incredible hero call from Texas Mike Monchek. Unbelievable.
Thanks.
One of the greatest hands I've ever seen of this game.
Look, guys.
Yep, good game.
Chris, that's outstanding. And
I cannot believe that just happened.
Mike really showed